in numerous rings across this country to neutralize that terrorist threat, including in places like New York City, Los Angeles, and I believe Dallas, Texas most recently.
How extensively did criminal cartels like Sinaloa, Jalisco, New Generation, MS-13, Trinidad and others infiltrate our country during the Biden administration?
By the tens of thousands.
Well, and what progress have you been making in combating their presence?
I think the DHS is best to speak to that, but I think I can't remember the numbers of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of individuals they found that came in illegally, and the tens of thousands that associations to criminal networks have all been deported.
And that effort is being opposed every step of the way by Democratic leaders in our cities, some of our states, and right here in the Congress. Isn't that true?
Well, we're just working where we can in every single city we can, and I welcome the opportunity to partner with Republicans or Democrats on fighting violent crime like we're doing.
Mr. Biggs asked about Arctic frost. What else can you tell us about that and what we need to do to assure that it never happens again?
All right, guys. Dr. John here. Best episode yet starts now. Neurologists, speech pathologists, and former officials are raising serious public concerns about Trump's mental acuity, backed by time-stamped video of him freezing mid-sentence, naming wrong states.
Continue the congressional oversight work that you're doing on Arctic frost. Let me provide you with more documentation on Arctic frost, and also call in witnesses from the paperwork that we have given you. You have that right, and the American public deserves to hear what those people have to say. As for my ongoing investigation, there's not much I can say.
What role did the FBI play in suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story during the 2024 election?
Off the top of my memory, sir, I believe the FBI was in possession of verified information from that laptop, and it was improperly publicized that they did not have information and masked it as Russian disinformation. We now know that was categorically false. I don't know why the FBI did that, when they did that, but we've released all the materials related to that.
Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York is recognized. Mr. Goldman.
Mr. Patel, does Donald Trump appear anywhere in the Epstein files?
Confusing two different women and silently swaying on stage for nearly an hour. The question isn't whether it happened, it's all on tape. The question is what it means when the leader of the free world visibly glitches in real time. The specific moment that broke through the noise and seared itself into the public consciousness happened during a gathering of gun rights supporters in Texas. Picture the scene. A packed convention hall, the teleprompters are loaded, the red hat is adjusted, and the former president is rolling through his usual cadence. Then, unexpectedly, the engine stalls.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
It's not a complicated question. Does Donald Trump appear anywhere in the Epstein files?
I didn't say it was a complicated question. I just didn't hear you, so my apologies. We have released where President Trump's name's in the Epstein files and everybody else, and all credible information that we are legally allowed to release has been released.
All right, so let's go through that. You're referring to court orders that prohibit you from releasing grand jury testimony under Rule 6E. Is that what you're referring to when you say as the law allows?
That's a piece of it.
Really? What other evidence do those three court orders you cited prohibit from being released?
Information that was collected pursuant to those search warrants that were limited in fashion.
Wrong.
Okay.
That's not what the court order says, and that's not under 6E.
And you're talking, and I said that's 6E, and I said there was others, and I'm answering that. There are sealed court order documents. There are protective orders.
They are unsealed as part of discovery.
Trump stops talking. He doesn't gesture to the crowd. He doesn't point to a malfunctioning screen. He just stands there, locked in a rigid posture, staring into the middle distance as the instrumental soundtrack loops for a duration that feels like an eternity. We aren't talking about a brief, dramatic pause for applause. This was a clinically measurable gap spanning over half a minute. In the world of live television, 30 seconds of dead air is a catastrophe. Here, those 30-plus seconds revealed a man appearing to disconnect from his surroundings.
Given to Ghislaine Maxwell. They are no longer sealed.
That's just not true. We can argue about it all you want.
Okay, well, you agree that there are... So your testimony here is that the reason why you are not releasing all of the videos that you have acknowledged, there are so many, and that the FBI spent thousands of hours of reviewing, the photographs, the photographs that you have. You're saying that you're not releasing those because there's a court order requiring them to be sealed? Is that your testimony?
Never said that about the videos. On the totality of the videos, of the thousands of images that were seized pursuant to the search warrants executed at the time, the overwhelming majority of that video is pornographic material that was downloaded from the internet and child sexual abuse material. We will never release that.
Well, as you should not release the victims. But if there are videos that relate to others who Epstein trafficked to, such as maybe Prince Andrew, or photographs.
His head jolting slightly in micro movements while the arena waited in confused silence. The most damning part of the entire episode is the multi-angle verification, because this wasn't a single zoom lens shot that could be dismissed as a technical glitch or a distorted deep fake. It was captured simultaneously by network cameras, cell phones, and independent press pools from every possible vantage point. You can cross-reference the timestamps and see the exact same frozen demeanor from the left flank, the right flank, and the center.
That you have total control to release.
Yes, and if it exists...
And so why haven't you released it?
Why are you supposing that that is a fact when in fact it is false? Are you saying that...
You're saying that none of the videos relate to anything relevant to the Jeffrey Epstein trafficking ring?
Every single video that we have collected pursuant to the prior search warrants has been examined for the last 10 years. And every single video has been utilized for whatever prosecutions were able to be legally brought.
I'm not asking about prosecutions. I'm asking about why you aren't releasing the full Epstein files, including the names of people who were involved in the sex ring that you promised to do before you became FBI director.
I just told you, I'm not going to release downloaded porn of
I'm not
children
asking
on the
about
internet.
that. Fine. I'm asking about all the other files.
What other videos? Tell me.
When you watch the clips synced up, the narrative collapses. This wasn't a teleprompter outage. If the words disappeared, a standard speaker ad-libs or engages the crowd. This was a neurological stall. The duration was measured, the head tremor was documented, and the sudden, unacknowledged reboot where he simply resumed speaking as if he hadn't just time-traveled through a half-minute void made the entire spectacle profoundly unsettling. Later, the spin machine tried to normalize it.
Tell me.
That's what I'm asking.
Tell me.
You're saying there are no videos that would be relevant to anyone else involved in the Jeffrey Epstein sex ring.
Pursuant to Mr. Acosta's collection of information based on the search warrants. That's all we have in our
I
possession.
understand. And I'm asking you, that stuff.
That's all we got.
I'm not asking all you got. I'm asking you, in that stuff, there's nothing that's related to to any other sex traffic, any other people engaged with Epstein in underage sex.
That's correct. To my knowledge, no.
Okay. Let's talk about the witness interviews. 302s of witness interviews. Those are not subject to the court order. Those are not subject to any fictional sealed order for a search warrant. Why aren't you releasing those with the redacted names of the victims?
We are releasing as much as legally allowed. That's why we went back to the courts.
How is that not legally allowed?
Sir, do you know how court orders work? Do you know how protective orders
Actually,
work? Do you know how
Mr.
sealing
Patel,
orders
I was
work?
a real prosecutor for 10 years. I know exactly how.
So I was a
court
fake one?
orders. And I want to understand.
Calling it a standard theatrical device. But you don't need a medical degree to know that standing catatonic on a stage while elevator music drones in the background is not standard theater. It's a distress signal. And honestly, can we pause for a second to discuss the sheer absurdity of the geographic meltdown that keeps playing out in the most humiliating way possible? There is a specific rally where Trump, with absolute certainty and volume, bellows to a sea of supporters that they are in a state they absolutely are not.
What the court order prevents you from releasing witness statements that the FBI took.
You should know that as a real prosecutor, when the court hand downs a protective order and a motion to seal, the material is sealed unless
So
that
your
judge
testimony
waives
here
it.
is that all of those witness statements are under a court order, a protective order.
We are providing everything we can legally provide.
Now, that's not my
Congress
question.
has sent us a
My
subpoena.
question is, why are those witness statements that are not grand jury testimony, that if they were under a protective order are no longer under a protective order, why are they not being released?
How are they not
And
under a protective
Why
order?
are you not going to the court like you did for the grand jury testimony to unseal those
The
records?
DOJ did go to the court.
No, not on those records. Why aren't you going? You just went on grand jury.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
You are hiding the Epstein files,
Time
Mr.
of the
Patel.
gentleman has expired.
You are part of the cover-up.
Standing right there in a crucial swing state in the mid-Atlantic, he roars out the name of a state located about 400 miles to the south. The crowd's reaction is the giveaway. You can see the visceral confusion ripple through the audience. Some people laugh nervously, assuming it's a dad joke that didn't land. Others look physically pained, their mouths slightly agape, their heads tilting as if a glitch in the matrix just revealed itself.
Can I respond?
Sure can.
Any allegations that I'm a part of a cover-up to protect child sexual trafficking and victims of human trafficking and sexual crimes is patently and categorically false, and the work of my
So I hope you will talk to them when they have requested to speak with you, because the victims have requested and you are not responding to them.
Director, yes or no, is the FBI still spying on parents at school board meetings?
No, sir.
Is the FBI still targeting Catholics?
No, sir.
Is the FBI still spying on President Trump?
I don't believe so.
Is the FBI still censoring Americans?
No, sir.
Is the FBI still targeting Americans for shopping at Cabela's or purchasing Bibles?
Nobody is targeted for their faith.
Is the FBI still targeting Americans who are pro-life?
Nobody is targeting anyone for their beliefs.
Is the FBI still cooking the...
The critical issue here is the lack of self-correction. High-functioning individuals, when they misplace a location, immediately catch the error and make a self-deprecating joke to recover. They say, "Whoops, long day on the trail, you know where I am." The absence of that correction mechanism is what fascinates clinical observers. It signals a chasm between perception and reality that the brain isn't bridging. This state-level disorientation isn't a one-off slip of the tongue. It folds into a far larger tapestry of identification collapse. We have seen him look directly into cameras and assign political enemies to roles they don't occupy, conflating a former Republican primary rival with a Democratic elder stateswoman so frequently that it stopped being a gaffe and became a predictable ritual. These two women share no physical resemblance, no political ideology, and no chronological age group. Yet, in the index of his recall, they appear to be filed in the same broken folder. This particular mix-up was not a private conversation leaked to the press. It happened on the record multiple times, forcing aides to wince and reporters to triple-check their transcripts. The clinical term for this isn't misspeaking. It's a profound deficit in semantic memory retrieval. When you repeatedly mislabel core figures in your personal narrative, you aren't just distracted, you are displaying a degradation of the neural pathways that organize your biographical timeline. Then we arrive at the moment that broke the format of political engagement entirely. We have to talk about the Pennsylvania auditorium event that descended into a surreal, semi-silent disco. This was supposed to be a standard town hall where citizens stand up and ask about grocery prices or foreign wars. After a couple of medical emergencies in the crowd paused the proceedings, something shifted in the headliner's operating system. Rather than resuming the Q&A, Trump announced he was done with the questions. Instead, he instructed the booth to crank up the playlist. What followed was a 30 to 40-minute stretch of pure surrealism where the presidential candidate just stood on stage, shifting his weight, swaying slightly, bopping along to the tracks, and staring out into the footlights. The audience didn't know whether to leave, dance, or panic. Town halls are transactional events. They end with a wave and a final handshake. They do not end with an impromptu, near catatonic music hour. Critics tried to frame it as a charming, spontaneous moment of connection, but the video evidence betrays the intention. This was not an energetic dance party. It was a cessation of function. The body language experts who analyzed the footage noted the repetitive, self-soothing nature of the swaying, a motor behavior often observed when the executive centers of the brain are overwhelmed or fatigued. In the context of a hyper-demanding schedule, the inability to process verbal questions and the subsequent retreat into rhythmic movement and sensory input, the loud music, paints a picture of a central nervous system that had hit a hard limit. You can't look at that footage and tell me it's normal political behavior. It's a coping mechanism displayed on a massive scale. Beyond the viral video clips, the academic and institutional computational scrutiny provides the empirical backbone that makes the anecdotal evidence undeniable. The department at a leading Ivy League university decided to stop treating these speech patterns as political rhetoric and start analyzing them as data. By applying computational linguistics to decades of his speaking history, researchers mapped out the trajectory of his verbal complexity. What they found should stop every voter cold. The architecture of his sentences has drastically simplified. The vocabulary has shrunk. The incidence of tangential off-ramps, repetitions, and filler words has spiked in ways that align exclusively with age-related cognitive narrowing, not strategic messaging. A politician choosing to dumb down a speech uses simpler words, but maintains logical coherence. The linguistic signature identified in this academic audit is distinct. It is non-sequential logic, frequent perseveration on specific words regardless of context, and the jarring replacement of target nouns with generic placeholders. This is not a communication style. It is a clinical symptom set recorded in a lab environment. When you pair this data with the cover story from a leading global affairs publication, the mosaic is complete. A seasoned foreign policy journalist, prepared to analyze geopolitical strategy, ended up providing a clinical observation of a prime-time televised address. The write-up didn't focus on troop movements or trade deficits. It described in damning plain English a speaker who appeared lost and confused on his own stage, a leader who seemed unable to keep the thread of his own scripted remarks, veering off into repetition and self-contradiction in a setting deliberately designed to control for error. This wasn't a political blog post. It was a sobering assessment from the intellectual high ground of international relations, warning that the commander-in-chief lacked baseline situational lucidity during a crisis announcement. The audacity of the observation is only matched by the visual tape that backs it up, and the geographical pronunciation issues cannot be waved away as mere accent quirks. During a flashpoint of military tension with Iran, the discussion focused on the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow choke point for global oil that has been a household term for decades. Trump's attempts to vocalize this familiar strategic location came out garbled, forming a phonetic slurry that sounded closer to a human biological compound than a maritime passage. The mishandling of specific nouns that require sequential syllabic precision is a red flag for dysphagia or degenerative nerve interference. It's the verbal equivalent of stumbling on the stairs. Speaking of which, the physical manifestations provide a visual correlation to the verbal decline. We have all seen the painstakingly slow, shuffling descent down the ramp at the military academy, where a simple walk to a microphone became an exercise in balance control, requiring visible concentration and the two-handed death grip on a glass of water. The footage from international summits shows a man seeking stability from aides while navigating shallow steps that should be navigated on autopilot. Gross motor control and complex language processing share real estate in the brain's aging map. When you observe a simultaneous decline in both the ability to form a coherent strategic argument and the ability to walk down a gentle slope without assistance, you are witnessing global cognitive degradation, not a sports injury. The connection between the brain and the body is inseparable, and in this case, both are broadcasting signals of distress that are being hastily dismissed by loyalists, but meticulously noted by neurologists who are prohibited from a direct examination, but are allowed to observe the public data. Perhaps the most terrifying entry in this catalog is the report involving the Situation Room. It's one thing to watch a senior citizen fumble a speech in a controlled rally setting. It's another to learn, via rigorous journalistic deep dives, that the highest-level national security staff took active steps to quarantine the president during a life-or-death rescue operation. We're talking about an operation to retrieve downed pilots behind enemy lines, a scenario requiring minute-by-minute precision, quiet diplomacy, and absolute focus. According to the reporting, the president was deliberately excluded because his presence in that room was deemed a liability. The descriptions are brutal, an hours-long screaming marathon directed at staff, an emotional instability so volatile that the keepers of the nuclear football decided the decision-making environment was safer without the chief executive present. Think about the constitutional crisis embedded in that report. Career officials, patriots who have served multiple administrations, looked at the elected president and judged his psychological state too erratic for him to remain in the loop. The shouting, the rage, the inability to regulate emotional responses. These are not separate from cognitive health. They are often the disinhibited frontal lobe symptoms of a brain struggling to cope with the load of high-stakes pressure. You can't separate the screaming at aides from the frozen pauses on stage. Both are manifestations of a failing executive function. When the lips can't form Hormuz, and the legs can't navigate a ramp, and the staff is barricading the door to keep the president from blowing up a mission, you are way past the point of memory lapses and deep into the territory of comprehensive functional impairment. Let's address the contradictions, because the speed at which reality twists is blinding. In a condensed 10-minute window of a single interview regarding the Iran conflict, the official stance flipped 4 separate ways. The policy pendulum swung from "we are working with allies" to "we don't need anyone," from "the war is almost finished" to "we haven't won enough," from "the enemy is totally defeated" to "the enemy can still launch serious strikes." If you're a diplomat in a foreign capital listening to this, how do you calibrate your response? You can't have a negotiation where the authority figure is occupying 4 distinct realities in a 10-minute segment. The media outlets spliced these clips together back to back, and the effect is vertiginous. It's not the standard political flip-flop where a candidate changes a position over a decade. This is a shattering of continuity within seconds. This type of discourse suggests a fluidity of fact, a catastrophic short-term memory failure where the previous sentence evaporates and is replaced by a new, contradictory truth that is felt just as strongly. The Bedminster tape denial operates on the same neural pathway. Confronted with an audio recording from one of his own dining rooms, a tape where his voice is unmistakably describing a classified document he claimed didn't exist, the reaction was pure confabulation. He didn't parse the legal difference. He simply stared into the camera and asserted the paper didn't exist, negating what everyone could hear with their own ears. This isn't lying in the Machiavellian sense to avoid jail. Lying requires a conscious memory of the truth that you are choosing to hide. Confabulation is the brain's automatic reflex to fill a memory gap, a false reality generated instantly to cover a blank spot in the hard drive. You might be wondering why the standard medical disclosures of the highest office in the land feel so murky. Typically, the personal physician walks to the briefing room microphone and reads off cholesterol numbers, blood pressure stats, and the results of cognitive screens. They answer questions. They provide a baseline. In the current construct, the medical reports feel more like press releases from a publicist than clinical documentation. They boast about acing tests without ever specifying the actual neurological data. The lack of transparency on a Montreal cognitive assessment or any detailed neuropsychiatric evaluation creates a massive shadow of doubt. If everything is fine, the fastest way to disarm critics would be to release a comprehensive, independently verified battery of tests showing perfect executive function. The fact that this hasn't happened and that the observable data points to the exact opposite puts the burden of proof back on the voter's own eyes. A pattern of dismissing serious medical conditions adds a layer of psychological complexity to this opacity. We've seen a documented history of downplaying traumatic brain injuries, famously calling them headaches. For an elderly individual who might be experiencing microvascular changes or neural degeneration, the reflexive dismissal of brain trauma takes on a new, darker hue. It reads as projection, a psychological denial mechanism. If brain injuries are just minor headaches in your worldview, you never have to confront the terrifying reality that your own cognitive processing might be faltering. This dismissive posture toward neuroscience allows a protective bubble to form, even as the live microphones catch the brain short-circuiting in real time. To be intellectually generous, we have to consider the counter-arguments because they are deployed with great discipline. The loyal defense apparatus will tell you that all public speakers have bad moments taken out of context. They'll claim the physical stiffness is due to an old golf injury or uneven stage construction. They'll frame the slurring and state confusion as evidence of a punishing schedule that would tire out any young athlete. They'll assert that the lost and confused look is simply a deep, philosophical contemplation that us mere mortals can't comprehend. They'll point to the ability to occasionally read a teleprompter for 90 minutes without a catastrophic collapse as proof of perfect health, ignoring that the complexity of those utterances has almost disappeared. The argument is that isolated clips are cherry-picked hit jobs, but that defense crumbles when you stack the clips on top of the linguistics paper, on top of the situation room leak, on top of the physical balance issues. Selective editing implies there is a hidden cache of footage showing complex, spontaneous, high-wattage cognitive performance. Where is it? Where are the unscripted town halls where he seamlessly navigates data, holds a complex line of questioning, and walks away without melting down or freezing? They don't exist because the unscripted environment is where the pathology exposes itself. This is about the raw mechanics of national survival. The authority to launch a weapon that can end human civilization rests in a single human mind. The doctrine demands that this mind is supple, alert, capable of distinguishing a false alarm from a real threat, capable of remembering the name of the country he's dealing with in the hotline moment. The verbal stumbles over Hormuz aren't funny trivia. They are indicators of how the brain processes critical proper nouns under pressure. The North Carolina shout isn't a travel mistake. It's a failure of spatiotemporal orientation. A mind that can be tricked by its own confabulations, a mind that sways silently on a stage because it can't process the demands of a town hall, is a mind that should not be the sole custodian of the single most destructive power in human history. The aides who blockaded the situation room understood this on a primal level. They made a temporary ethical decision to sideline a cognitively compromised leader to save lives. But we cannot rely on such heroics in every future scenario. The institutional guardrails are gone if the president decides to act impulsively based on a false memory or an uncontrollable rage cycle. This is the slow-motion emergency we are living through. It's a cascade of freezing, swaying, forgetting, conflating, and raging that maps perfectly onto the clinical expectations of end-stage executive decline. Every new rally brings the tense anticipation of a new viral pause. Every international negotiation is haunted by the ghost of the lost and confused verdict from the foreign policy establishment. The question isn't partisan, it's physiological. Can the machine still perform the tasks required of it? The evidence says no. The video says no. The linguists say no. The former staffers say no. The only ones saying yes are those who put political power above the terrifying reality of what we are witnessing. Keep your eyes on the stage, because the music is playing, the script is stopped, and the freeze is never actually the end of it. It's just the warning shot for whatever comes next. The reality of the situation is that we have never been here before as a nation, watching a leader's neural decline happen on C-SPAN, frame by frame, while the clock ticks toward the next unthinkable decision that requires a clarity that is demonstrably no longer there.